The blood garden did not smell like blood, which disappointed some tourists. Instead, the air carried hints of scorched jasmine and burnt metal, scents pumped through ornate vents by a sentient aromaarchitect named G.L. Truan, who insisted combat should always be framed with poetic dignity. The arena floated in geostationary orbit above Valgonta IX, a gas giant prone to sentimental weather. Today, the sky below was weeping electrical storms in shades of violet and rose, a response, supposedly, to the impending slaughter scheduled at noon. A crowd of 300,000 living beings, some carbon-based, some experimental, packed the amphitheater's transparent tiers, buzzing in languages that smelled, shimmered, or bit. The upper decks overflowed with Galactic Council dignitaries and high-born aristocrats, sipping neurostatic wines and laughing in lazy synchrony as they watched the betting boards flicker to life. At the very bottom of the screen, beneath every tentacled titan and gland-enhanced predator, blinked a lone icon. Species 119b. Homo sapiens, Terran, female. Next to her name, a probability rating so low it had collapsed into scientific notation. The betting algorithms had, in effect, given up. "Is she small, or are the pixels bad?" asked a Lurvan diplomat, tapping her ocular interface. "Why is she crouching?" "She's a human," said another. "They crouch for comfort. Or for war. No one's sure." The arena's holographic announcer, a chrome-plated, five-faced abomination named Voice of Triumph, extended cut, crackled to life at center stage. Confetti cannons exploded out of habit. Glorious beings of every fleshy, feathered, and fungal form. Welcome to the 974th Grand Confrontation of Ideological Supremacy via Combat. Cheers erupted. One section of the audience howled in ultrasonic harmony. Another section belched formaldehyde. The camera shifted to a sweeping shot of the red and gold arena floor. In the center stood a single human woman, unmoving, outlined by twin pillars of light. She looked absurdly unbothered. Sergeant Ellie Voss of the now-defunct 78th Recon Battalion did not blink at the fanfare. She did not wave. She did not smile. She simply adjusted her rifle strap and checked the wind with the flat of her hand, as if she were standing on a rooftop back on Earth, lining up a shot in a dust-choked alley, and not preparing to fight something named Krovzar the Spine-Eater in front of half the known galaxy. A blue-skinned Glubtari reporter bounced into frame beside her, tentacles jittering with excitement. "Human," it chirped. "On behalf of the interstellar broadcast audience, how do you feel? Nervous? Proud? Ready to be consumed messily?" Ellie looked at the creature, blinked once, and said, "Your mic is upside down." "Oh, how embarrassing. Wait, is that a threat?" Ellie turned away. She had already marked 10 sniper nests, 3 fire-blind corners, and the odd quiver in the artificial gravity. She did not plan to die today. She planned to make a point. Up in the nebula box, the council elders leaned back in their thrones. High Commander Thur of the Kronti Empire exhaled sulfur from his third nostril. "Remind me," he rumbled, "why did we allow them to enter the games?" "Political theater," said a Ilax diplomat, who looked like a pile of elegantly breathing laundry. "The humans insisted. Something about representation. They only sent one fighter." "Yes. And she's a woman." Thur grunted. "They fear war. Everyone knows it. All heart, no hide." "Then the match will be brief," the Ilax said, sipping from a floating chalice. "The crowd enjoys a good splatter." At that moment, the lights darkened. The arena floor split open, and from the rising platform below, Krovzar emerged. The Spine-Eater. All 12 feet of him. His exoskeleton gleamed like forged obsidian. Every movement emitted a low rumble, as if the ground resented holding him. 6 arms flexed and clicked, each tipped with a different weapon. Across his chest, the bones of former opponents hung like macabre medals. He threw back his head and shrieked, an ear-splitting roar that sent half the audience into mating spasms. Ellie Voss took a sip from her canteen. The announcer returned, nearly shorting out from excitement. In the crimson corner, Warborn Prince of the Dune Moon clans, destroyer of mercenary fleets, champion of the bladed spiral, Kare Vizitar. Krovzar slammed a spear into the ground. The arena shook. And in the carbon corner, representing Planet 119b, Sol System, Terran Bio Subtype, Sergeant Ellie Voss. There was a polite, scattered applause from a delegation of Earth interns in the cheapest seats. The crowd, sensing imminent disappointment, began loading side bets into their neural wallets. How many limbs she would lose, how long she would scream, whether her internal organs would remain alphabetical. The match timer glowed red. 60 seconds. The Glubtari reporter leaned in once more, trembling with projected pity. Any final words, human? Ellie Voss adjusted the scope on her rifle. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was calm and surgical. Tell your viewers to pay attention. They're about to learn something. The timer beeped, and the lights went out. When the lights came back on, Krovzar was already mid-charge. He didn't run so much as consume distance, each step a controlled detonation of muscle, force, and armor. His lower claws gouged trenches in the arena floor. His upper limbs clacked with anticipation. The middle pair held a jagged cleaver and something that looked like a plasma-fed anchor. Audience members in Section 12 began sobbing with excitement. The arena's gravity groaned. Ellie Voss rolled her shoulders once. She didn't raise her rifle. She just stepped left, almost casually, and let Krovzar barrel through empty space with all the grace of a freight train missing its track. His cleaver sang through air. His anchor embedded into a steel pillar with a shriek and a spray of molten shrapnel. Somewhere in the stands, a Squinteran noble spilled its drink and applauded with its gills. Ellie, still not speaking, adjusted the rifle's grip. Her HUD displayed real-time variables. Wind vectors, artificial but erratic, Krovzar's heat signatures, weak points along the clavicle and underjoint. Her targeting software, politely ignored. Krovzar turned with an offended screech. She moves like prey, he roared, switching dialects mid-sentence, trying to get one she understood. Your kind runs. Ellie raised her rifle. Didn't fire. Not yet. Above them, the betting boards lit up with fury. Krovzar, 99.999%. Ellie Voss, hot beverage. A small note flashed beneath her name. 1 Terran wager placed, 100 credits. Source, Earth Ambassador, Flagship Wi-Fi. In the council box, High Commander Thur blinked with both sets of eyes. Someone bet on her? Probably irony, muttered the Ilax ambassador, his folds twitching. Or insurance. Thur narrowed his eyes at the Earth representative, an unassuming man in a second-hand uniform who had just opened a thermos. Back in the arena, Krovzar roared again and activated his plasma gland. A searing jet of green fire sprayed forward, melting a section of the outer wall. The crowd gasped and shrieked in pleasure. Ellie ducked low behind a fallen arch, flicked a control on her visor, and watched the superheated gas slow down in her lens, a glowing serpent writhing through the air. She marked 3 points in her environment: a fragment of reflective alloy, a half-buried column base, a dislodged chunk of Krovzar's own armor. Her lips barely moved. Tag 1. Tag 2. Tag 3. She moved. Not fast. Not recklessly. Just with the kind of certainty that made fate pay attention. Krovzar followed, snarling, hurling debris. One massive claw clipped her shoulder and sent her sprawling, but she rolled with it, kicked out hard, and brought her boot down on a pressure plate buried in the sand. The ground beneath him cracked. Only slightly, but enough. He stumbled. And Ellie fired. Not at him, at the reflective fragment. The round ricocheted, hit the column base, bounced again. The final shot struck Krovzar in the jaw, not hard enough to kill, but enough to make his fourth eye swell shut and knock his stance offline. The crowd went quiet. Not entirely, but with a new edge. Krovzar stood slowly, foam leaking from his mandibles. He roared again, but it was less declarative now. There was a wobble. Ellie reloaded. The Glubtari announcer, broadcasting live to 17 star systems, hiccuped in panic. Fascinating display of primitive ballistics from the Terran female. What raw, what chaotic, what... Is she calculating something? She was. Inside her helmet, her heart rate remained steady. 72 BPM. Her AI whispered microangles in a soothing voice modeled after someone she no longer remembered. Her arms ached, just slightly. Her shoulder bruised. Her pulse rifle read 2 rounds left. Krovzar lunged. Ellie dropped prone, let his shadow pass, and aimed, not at him but at the ground. She fired. The round exploded beneath his back leg, a shaped charge packed into a dust shell casing she'd smuggled in through technical ambiguity. The resulting blast didn't throw him, but it threw his rhythm. He landed sideways. Momentum met mass met a very angry floor. The thud was loud enough to stop conversation in the luxury suites. The betting board spasmed. Krovzar, 82.3%. Ellie Voss, 17.7% hot beverage fire. Somewhere on Valgontu, lightning flashed in what scholars would later call concern. The Earth ambassador sipped his tea. "She's walking him," someone whispered in the stands. "Like a dog." "No," said a Joryun tactician, teeth clicking in alarm. "She's drawing a map." Down in the sand, Krovzar snarled and tried to rise. Ellie stepped forward, one deliberate pace. Her voice, amplified now through the arena speakers, rang out sharp and cold. "You like killing?" she asked. The spine-eater bared his fangs. "Then pay attention." She fired once more. Around that curved, not through tech, but through planning, through math, through pre-fight study of airflow grids, material tolerances, and Krovzar's own overconfidence. The bullet entered under his left clavicle and stopped his auxiliary lung. Not fatal, but suddenly very difficult to breathe. Krovzar collapsed to one knee, and Ellie walked, slowly, unflinchingly, toward him. The silence in the blood garden was total. Even GL Truan, the sentient scent system, stopped emitting aromas. Krovzar looked up, wheezing. Ellie Voss looked down at the most feared warrior in 9 star systems, and raised her rifle. 1 shot left. She didn't fire. Not yet. Instead, she leaned in and said, just loud enough for the audience to hear, "You shouldn't have spoken." And then she pulled the trigger. The shot landed just above Krovzar's sternum, an entry point where armor gave way to pride. No fire. No fanfare. Just a soft crack, like distant thunder on a dry plain. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Krovzar's limbs buckled, his body folding inward like a collapsing throne. His jaw spasmed once. A guttural, almost childlike sound escaped his mandibles. Then he dropped, face first, into the red sand. A ripple of dust whispered out from the impact. Silence swallowed the arena. 58 seconds of deathly stillness. Not even the scent system dared to perfume the moment. Somewhere in the upper tiers, a bulbous aristocrat fainted. A Cornic monk sobbed into its incense pouch. The betting boards glitched, recalculated, then crashed entirely, unable to compute the ramifications of what had just occurred. Ellie Voss lowered her rifle with the care of someone setting down a violin after a perfect final note. She didn't gloat, didn't raise her arms. She simply stepped over Krovzar's corpse, checked his pulse out of habit, not necessity, and walked away. The announcer's voice returned in a stammer. "Ladies and quorums, the match has concluded. T the winner, by confirmed biometric cessation of all major functions. Representing Earth, Sergeant Ellie Voss." The crowd still didn't react. It wasn't that they didn't understand what had happened. They simply couldn't process that it had happened this way. No chaos. No power moves. No glorious final scream. Just precision. Restraint. Efficiency. Like watching a scalpel take down a meteor. Inside the nebula box, High Commander Thur sat rigid, his hands clenched. The Ilax ambassador had ceased breathing in 3 of his folds. The Earth representative, meanwhile, had leaned back with the mild contentment of a man watching his tea steep correctly. "She aimed at a non-critical nerve cluster," murmured Thur. "Then bypassed armor through a gravitational microcurl. How does a species barely out of atmosphere do that?" "She didn't kill him quickly," said the Ilax, voice fluttering. "She dismantled him. Like a mechanic. One sector below, in the media pit, the Glubtari reporter had dropped its mic. Its tentacles sagged, overwhelmed by existential irrelevance. Cameras zoomed in on Ellie as she reached the edge of the arena. A holographic interviewer hovered toward her, projecting a dozen language options, all flickering. "Sergeant Voss, the galaxy demands to know, how did you do it?" Ellie blinked slowly. Her voice was flat, almost bored. "Physics." The hologram stuttered. "And how does it feel to defeat a champion considered mathematically impossible to beat?" She paused. Then, loud. The screen cut out. Behind her, Krovzar's body was already being processed by the retrieval drones. They moved with clinical speed, tagging limbs, sealing ruptures, cataloging the data for Council archives. His trophy bones had scattered into the sand. One drifted near Ellie's boot. She didn't pick it up. Didn't need to. The galaxy would remember without souvenirs. Within minutes, news feeds across 7 sectors had replaced their primetime rotations with looped footage of the final shot. Every angle, every telemetry feed, every detail of Ellie's stance, posture, breath pattern, muscle contraction, and expressionless face. On the war moon of Drakthal, a military academy paused its planetary war game to replay her strategy. On the fungal homeworld of Florm, a council of psychic spores held a moment of reverent silence. And on Earth, things were oddly quiet. The footage hadn't arrived yet. Bureaucratic delay. Budget issue. No one really expected anything special. But that would change. At the arena's exit corridor, Ellie removed her helmet and tucked it under her arm. Her hair was damp with sweat, her eyes unflinching. She walked past technicians, drones, medbots. None dared speak. One offered her a protein cube. She waved it off. In her locker room, bare metal, plain chair, one flickering light, Ellie sat for a long while. Her fingers trembled once. Not from fear. From memory. A flash. The ridge in Kandahar. Dust. Screams. Her spotter's final breath. Another flash. The desert of Dune 8. A mission scrubbed for politics. Civilians left behind. She closed her eyes. One breath in. One out. Then the door opened. It was the Earth ambassador. He carried 2 cups. "Coffee," he said. "Figured you might prefer it to glowing slime wine." Ellie accepted the mug. "Thanks," she said. "You're a bit of a problem now, you know." "Only a bit?" He laughed once. "The Council's going to want a full psychological profile, weapon schematics, DNA breakdown, neural scan, and probably a public apology." Ellie sipped her coffee. "Tell them I'm camera shy." He tilted his head. "You know what you just did? Wanna fight? You reshaped galactic military theory. Half the outer rim just moved Earth's threat index from intriguing to actively terrifying." Ellie leaned back. "Good. Maybe they'll stop calling us moist." The ambassador raised his mug in salute. "To moist and murderous." Ellie clinked hers against his. Just once. Outside, the arena's walls pulsed with endless replay. And somewhere in a classified intelligence vault, a file was updated. Project Voss, status, unleashed. The Galactic Council convened in crisis mode, which looked remarkably similar to regular mode, except there were more snacks and slightly higher-pitched panic. Emergency treaties were withdrawn. Trade agreements suspended. One delegate from the Tri-Lunged Peoples fainted during a motion to rename Earth's diplomatic category from low-risk experimental to high-precision catastrophic. In Sector 5's Peace Lounge, ambassadors hissed over platters of plasma shrimp while a 3-eyed analyst attempted to explain ballistics curves using holographic fruit. "Do all human women fight like this?" one barked. The Earth ambassador gave his signature shrug, the universal human diplomatic gesture for "we're just as surprised as you are." "Sergeant Voss is a rare configuration," he said, carefully not lying. "But I wouldn't recommend finding out where the curve flattens." The council chamber echoed with the nervous clatter of data slates. Down on the arena floor, now empty and quiet, A maintenance bot gently hosed down the crater where Krovzar's face had made its final political statement. The Blood Garden's AI had already flagged the event as Archival Priority Alpha, filing it under Terran Intervention, category Oops. Galactic law enforcement tried to open a tribunal, purely procedural of course, but were swiftly overruled when the Valgontu orbital system declared the match spiritually flawless. Even the sentient planet wept again. Small, shimmering storms circling its equator like rings of grief and awe. Ellie Voss didn't return for debriefing. She simply left. Boarded the shuttle, sat in the back row, boots up, helmet on her lap. When the pilot tried to make small talk, she stared at him until the controls mysteriously dimmed in self-preservation. The ship slipped into fold space with a soft, respectful hum, as if trying not to wake anything. By the time the footage of her final shot reached Earth, the internet had already erupted in memes, conspiracy threads, and several amateur physics dissertations. One former MIT professor simply posted, "She curved a bullet. I quit." Her image, stone-faced, visor up, rifle down, circulated across hundreds of civilizations. Some called her the ghost of Valgontu. Others dubbed her the whisper that shoots. One minor war cult on Gloss 9 declared her a divine avatar of precision and banned speaking during breakfast in her honor. Ellie ignored it all. She returned to Earth under the radar, her file stamped declassified, not yet. No fanfare. No parade. Back at base, she unpacked exactly 2 things into her locker, a photo of her mother, and the last casing from the final shot. She didn't mount them. Just let them sit quietly, where they belonged. She took long walks at dusk, ate in silence, recalibrated rifles that didn't need recalibrating. And when a young cadet finally worked up the courage to ask, "What was it like, ma'am?" "That shot." She paused, tilted her head, and said, "It needed doing. No more. No less." Meanwhile, in orbit, the Council drafted an unprecedented charter addendum. Clause 11-49b. Underestimation of Earth-based female combatants shall be considered a strategic hazard. The ambassador signed it with a smile. Intergalactic militaries quietly amended their training protocols. Some nations banned humans from single combat tournaments altogether, publicly to protect cultural balance, privately to avoid additional funerals. Krovzar's homeworld entered 3 weeks of mourning, followed by a national sport rebranding campaign. No one mentioned his loss by name. Just a vague, uneasy reference to the incident. Ellie didn't watch the news. Didn't grant interviews. She sat on a park bench most mornings, eyes following birds across the skyline, breath steady, face unreadable. When asked what she wanted in exchange for her victory, she answered, quiet. And Earth, newly respected, freshly feared, gave it to her. For a while. But the galaxy doesn't stay quiet for long. And somewhere, in the deeper dark, someone else was watching the footage of that single, silent kill. Studying it. Pausing. Rewinding. Wondering. Because the universe had once believed that human women feared war. And now they were scrambling to remember who told them that lie in the first place. If this story made your pulse skip, click that like button, drop a comment with your favorite moment, and subscribe for more tales where humanity doesn't just survive the galaxy, it recalibrates it. Earth is listening. And Ellie, she's still waiting.